The Sakha, also known as the Yakuts, are the indigenous people in Siberia who speak the Old Turkic language. The Sakha Republic is currently the second largest administrative region populated by people of the yellow race in the world. Its territory is roughly equivalent to that of India and is twice the size of Alaska. The Sakha Republic is the coldest land on Earth with permanent residents, and more than 40% of its territory lies within the Arctic Circle. However, beneath its icy surface lies extremely rich mineral resources. It accounts for a quarter of the world's diamond supply and holds 90% of Russia's diamond resources, as well as significant amounts of antimony, 70% of the uranium reserves, 50% of the coal reserves, and 40% of the natural gas and oil in eastern Siberia. To this day, these resources are controlled by Russian oligarchs. This is a land as cold as Antarctica. -55°C is a common temperature in winter. It's so cold that you can hear the hissing sound of your own breath. Yet, this place has a unique, rich and long humanistic history. So, who were their ancestors? What kind of stories do they have? Today, let's step into this magical land and start our journey to trace the origin of the Sakha people. Before the 13th century, the ancestors of the Sakha people had been fishing and hunting for generations along the southeastern shore of Lake Baikal and in the Yenisei River basin. Throughout history, they were known as Chila, Chili, Gaucha, Dingling, and Dili. In 1207 AD, the area around Lake Baikal became the fiefdom of Jokai, the eldest son of Genghis Khan. The ancestors of the Sakha people, who refused to be assimilated by the Mongols, chose to move northward. They led their livestock and migrated northward along the Lena River. Eventually, they established a new territory in the middle reaches of the Lena River. There is also a theory that this northward migration was a result of defeat and escape after being betrayed by their fellow Buryat brothers, who were also from the Chela people. This northward migration caused them to lose their runic writing system and, to some extent, changed their way of life. However, the ancestors of the Sakha people still adhered to the old calendar with 13 months, even though it had lost its practical significance, and this tradition continues to this day. The new settlement was extremely cold, since most of the settlement areas were Siberian swamps, tundras, and mosslands. In the beginning, they not only had to graze cattle and horses but also learned how to raise reindeer in the polar regions. At this time, the Sakha people still inherited the semi-sedentary and semi-nomadic lifestyle of their ancestors. During the winter, two neighboring Sakha families would live together to reduce the risks of survival in the extremely cold weather. Therefore, many Sakha people are still accustomed to living in groups and relying on each other. Due to the harsh living environment, their once iconic dwellings, tents, evolved into unique wooden buildings called balagan. This is a kind of residence built with thick and sturdy wooden soil. This kind of house was more practical, beautiful, and sturdy than the houses of many other Siberian indigenous people at that time. The ancient Sakha people also had fireplaces and chimneys, and even transparent windows. They ingeniously used dried animal bladders and ice blocks to improve the light transmission performance of the doors and windows. Of course, they didn't abandon their tents either. In summer, this traditional tent called yaha is their favorite villa. It provides good heat insulation and protection against insects, making it a favorite of the Sakha people in summer. This is a tent covered with double layers of birch bark and built with straight birch poles. They mixed cattle and horses in the herds. Generally, the ratio was 1 cow to 4 or 5 horses. In ancient times, the wealth of the Sakha people was mainly measured by the number of horses they owned. The short summer was mainly used for producing pasture grass. The word for July in the Sakha language literally means hay, a grass month. At that time, mowing grass was a collective labor activity for the Sakha people, and everyone needed to work together. Once the mowing was over, the Sakha people would set fire to the remaining bare grass to fertilize their grasslands. The Sakha people are good at singing ballads to commemorate their ancestors through oral transmission. Tens of thousands of verses are heroic epics about the ancestors of the Sakha people, which have been passed down from generation to generation as intangible cultural heritage by the Sakha people. In the early Sakha society, there were many clans and clan leaders called Toyan. They had considerable authority and influence. In ancient Sakha, the territories, pastures, grasslands, fishing grounds, and hunting grounds were all owned in common by the Sakha people. Each clan member had equal rights and also jointly assumed the obligation of mutual assistance. They had the tradition of helping the poor and the distressed, and the old, weak, sick, and disabled among the Sakha people would not go hungry or suffer from the cold. The ancient Sakha people had ancient and superb forging techniques. They respected blacksmiths and even equated them with the status of gods in shaman culture. Blacksmiths were often regarded as geniuses with magical powers. Today, Sakha knives have not been eliminated by the times. The exquisite knives, which are like works of art, are still favored by collectors all over the world. In the daily life of the ancient traditional Sakha people, their diet mainly included dairy products, berries, horse meat, reindeer meat, and fish. Eating horse meat and reindeer meat was usually a luxury in the past and was often reserved for feasts. It was not common in daily life. Even in the homes of wealthy farm owners, meat was not commonly seen. Eating meat was often a ceremonial way to entertain guests. The ancient Sakha people believed in animism and shamanism. They had their own original and complex legends. The cosmic gods were divided into the upper layer. The souls of people and the dead were in the middle layer. Evil spirits and monsters were in the lower layer. They had a creator god, I. The traditional Sakha people believed that all good gods lived in the east, while all evil or angry beings lived in the west. This led the Sakha people to usually build their houses facing east, and facing west was considered inauspicious. This concept is still, to a certain extent, a continuing tradition today. Like many other Siberian ethnic groups, the ancient Sakha people revered wild animals, especially bears. In Sakha legends, the bear is known as the king of the forest. In the 17th century, the Cossack expedition team of Russia arrived at the banks of the Lena River. In 1632 AD, the Russians built a castle on the right bank of the Lena River, which later became the capital city of Yakutsk, and from then on, they declared Russian sovereignty. The Russians not only brought the extortionate Yasak fur tax but also deadly infectious diseases and smallpox. This directly led to a 70% decrease in the Sakha population between 1640 and 1670. In addition to the ravages of the diseases, the then Russian governor, Pyotr Golovin, seemingly deliberately carried out a plan of ethnic extermination against the Sakha people. Those Sakha people who could not pay the fur tax were often hanged on meat hooks. In order to survive, the Sakha people had to buy furs at high prices from Russian hunters to pay off their tax debts. This directly led to the extinction of the local Mardan population and, moreover, caused the Sakha people to be directly enslaved by the Russians. Women were forced into prostitution, and men even sold themselves into slavery. The Cossacks and merchants even directly kidnapped Sakha people and made them into slaves that could be traded. In 1712, a Russian report stated that almost every farm in the capital city of Yakutsk had Sakha slave laborers. Since the arrival of the Russians in the early 17th century, the Sakha people have never stopped their rebellions. The largest one occurred in 1641, when many Russian soldiers and hunters were killed, and the Yakutsk castle was besieged by various Sakha tribes. However, the rebellion was eventually suppressed by the advanced firearms of the Russians. Ironically, even though the Russians spared no effort to try to exterminate the Sakha ethnic group and their culture, until the early 19th century, Russian tourists in Yakutsk often complained that the local Russians couldn't understand the Russian language. In 1830, a tourist named Shukin from Moscow said when talking about Yakutsk, the older Russian, people often talk to each other in Sakha. This language dominates all social activities. But this is not surprising. When your nanny at home is a Sakha, the cook is a Sakha, the driver is a Sakha, and the workers are all Sakha, you will naturally follow the local customs. If we need to find someone's house, it's simply a long ordeal. Who can we ask? No one understands Russian. More importantly, since the 17th century, due to dissatisfaction with Russian rule, many Sakha people fled the core area of the Lena Basin and expanded westward, eastward, and northward, extensively blending and even intermarrying with other Siberian indigenous ethnic groups. As a result, the Sakha language became the common language in northeastern Siberia. At the same time, it has also made the homeland of the Sakha people today, the Sakha Republic, the second largest administrative region of the yellow race after China. The ability to assimilate the colonizers is a testament to the tenacious vitality of this ethnic group. At the end of the 18th century, the Russians gradually revised their originally oppressive rule and began to grant some privileges to the Yakut chiefs. The modernization wave around the world began to enter this ancient and peaceful land. Great changes took place in Sakha society. First of all, due to the change of transportation means, cows became more valuable for breeding than horses. Secondly, the Russians also brought new foods and technologies, such as wheat, bread, guns, and rubber tires, especially in the early 19th century, with the popularization of cars and trains. Many Sakha people converted to the Orthodox Church in order to be exempt from taxes, and they creatively integrated it with shamanism, replacing the Russian name of God with the name of the shaman god I. The Sakha people protected their own traditional beliefs in a clever way. Because the Sakha region is located in a bitterly cold area, it once became a place where Russia exiled political prisoners. When rebellious Russians and rebellious Sakha people lived together, the Sakha region gradually became a hotbed of radicalism. During the 1905 revolution, Sakha lawyers, led by Vasily Nikiforov and city councillors, established a Yakut union. They condemned the influence of Russian colonialism and took actions to bring down the Russian Yakut Duma. This was the first time that the Sakha people stepped onto the historical stage and obtained the right to be represented in the Duma. During the Soviet era, the lifestyle of the Sakha people changed again. In 1922, the Yakut Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic was established. Many people were forced to leave their traditional small villages and gather in collective villages to engage in unified farming and labor. And the process of Russification of the Sakha traditional culture also began. The traditional Sakha alphabet was changed to the Cyrillic alphabet. Many Sakha elites were executed, imprisoned, or exiled. The charges were usually being Japanese spies. The Sakha language was prohibited from being used in public places in cities such as Yakutsk. Those Sakha people who violated the taboo were severely punished on the charge of bourgeois nationalism. The Russian language was compulsorily promoted as the only language, and shamanism was strictly prohibited. The traditional festival Olonko and the Sakha New Year were downplayed and belittled to the extent that they could only be seen as local customs in Sakha villages. Throughout the Soviet era, the number of settlers from Russia increased significantly, especially in Yakutsk and the southern regions along the Far Eastern Railway. Previously, the Sakha people made up the vast majority of the local population, but from this time on, the demographic balance began to tilt towards the Russian population. According to the population census in 1989, the Sakha population in this region accounted for only 33.4%, while Russians and Ukrainians accounted for 57.3%. However, in the vast rural areas, the population was still mainly composed of Sakha people. The large influx of Russians led to an intensification of ethnic tensions. Many Sakha people complained that Russian colonists had better houses and more privileges in getting cars, and well-paying and decent jobs usually belonged to Russian colonists. According to the data in 1992, in the local industries, agriculture accounted for 87% and the employees were mainly Sakha people, while the energy sector, which accounted for 16%, was occupied by Russians and enjoyed extremely high subsidies. This kind of unfairness brought serious consequences. In the 1970s, a Ukrainian tour guide warned Russian tourists who came to visit that if they accidentally entered the Sakha slums, their lives would be in danger. In 1979, ethnic tensions began to intensify. After a Russian man shot a young Sakha man, a very serious ethnic riot broke out in Yakutsk. Because the mistrust between the Sakha people and the Russians continues to this day, and similar incidents have hardly stopped. In December 1991, with the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the Yakut Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic was immediately renamed the Sakha Republic. They believed that Yakut was a term imposed on them by the Russians as a term of domination. Only the word of Sakha can represent their sovereignty. However, the name Yakutia still exists. Although it is retained in parentheses in the official name, one can still feel the meaning of compromise with the powerful Russia. At the end of the 1990s, a wave of traditional revival movement swept through the Sakha Republic. Shamanism and Sakha traditional festivals were widely restored and promoted. At this time, a large number of Russians, Ukrainians, and people from Central Asia thought that they were only there temporarily to make money. Once the situation changed, they would leave the Sakha Republic in large numbers. In 2002, for the first time since the population census in 1959, the number of Sakha people exceeded that of Russians. In the upcoming 2020 population census, the Sakha population may once again become the majority in the Sakha Republic. Today, the capital city of Yakutsk, with a population of over 1 million, is a prosperous city. It has attracted a large number of young people, and the population is still growing. The young people in the city dress fashionably, and the noisy nightclubs stay open until late at night. However, in recent years, as Russia has revived its imperial expansion ambitions after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the Russian government intends to weaken the status of ethnic minorities and their cultures in the Sakha Republic. The traditional culture of the Sakha Republic has once again faced a strong weakening campaign. In 2018, the Russian government banned the teaching of indigenous languages, including the Sakha language, and stipulated that these languages could only be offered as elective courses and required written applications from students' parents. This led to strong protests from the Sakha people, and many politicians also called for the complete abolition of this policy. It is gratifying that in recent years, the local film industry in Sakha has been booming. The Sakha film industry is affectionately known as Sakhawood. Sakha films frequently appear at film festivals around the world. Among them, there are many excellent works. As citizens of the Russian Federation, the lives of the Sakha people go on, although they will face more challenges in the future. But I believe that in the end, the destiny of the Sakha people will be shaped by themselves. Regarding the Sakha people, if you have anything else you want to know, please leave a message. See you next time.